Meanwhile, in a fresh spat between America and Turkey, Ankara has raised a question mark over the US-led coalition's continued use of its Incirlik Air Base.
It's thought-provoking that ally countries, especially countries with whom we have worked together in NATO for many years, countries who formed a coalition against Islamic State, do not support the operation Turkish armed forces and the Free Syrian Army have started in Al-Bab, a key town in the fight against ISIL. This causes Turkey to question the Incirlik Air Base.
Incirlik Air Base is considered a key NATO base in the Middle East and is the largest nuclear storage site in the region. It deploys 5,000 US military personnel and is mainly used by America's Air Force to fly combat sorties against ISIL in Syria. But as we've just heard, Turkey's now voicing disappointment with its ally, whom it regards as not fully supporting the fight against Islamic State. It's only the latest in a series of blows to US-Turkey relations, with Ankara recently having laid a raft of allegations at Washington's door, and America doing its utmost to appear unfazed.
Turkey is a NATO ally.
Friend and a NATO ally. Such a key partner.
Hey, America.
Oh, America, I told you many times, you either side with us or those terrorist organizations.
What do you think about the question, for Turkey, U.S. support for Kurdish fighters in Syria equals support for terrorists?
I don't think there's any question that we are partners with Turkey. We are allies with Turkey.
You see what's happening in Syria? What business do the U.S. soldiers, dressed up with these so-called patches of a terrorist organization, have there?
We are not only an ally to Turkey, we're a friend. We're a partner.
I advise them to wear ISIL, al-Nusra or al-Qaeda arm badges and to wear Boko Haram badges in Africa.
This is a crisis in relations with Turkey?
No, look, we've been, we understand Turkey's concerns.
The bilateral relationship that we have.
We all know that Fethullah Gulen is the leader of a terrorist organization. The nation supporting this person is not a friend of Turkey. It is an open enemy of Turkey.
Again, Turkey matters to us as a friend and an ally. Their democracy matters to us, and we've said that many times. It matters so much to us that we are going to stay in close touch with them going forward.
Theories regarding U.S. involvement in the coup attempt in Turkey.
Obviously, we had no involvement in this. Nothing's going to change about the close relationship we have with Turkey.
Well, let's bring in our guest now, Mr. Chris Bambury, a political analyst. Mr. Bambury, good to see you. Now, how serious do you think Turkey is? Could it really deny the US use of its airbase in Incirlik?
Well, that would be a major escalation of this, but I think what it does show is how far Turkey has shifted. As was alluded to in your package, Turkey, since the creation of NATO at the end of the Second World War, has been a key NATO member and a key ally of the United States. In the Cold War with Russia, where it was on the front line, and since the 1990s in the operations America's had in Iraq and the Gulf region. Really, under a series of pro-Western and democratic military regimes, Turkey was absolutely America's #1 ally in that region. Now we're seeing it shifting away. A series of spats which were mentioned around the attempted coup against Erdogan, which the Turkish government blamed on the Americans. The continued disintegration of US-Turkish relations around the question of Syria. And now, of course, the Americans being completely caught out by the Russian and Turkish brokered ceasefire in Syria. So things have moved a long way. And from where I'm sitting, the Turks must be looking at the Obama administration in its final days and thinking, you're in a complete mess with your foreign policy. It's good time for us to play hardball in the few weeks we have remaining while Obama is in the White House. We can capitalize on that and hopefully repair things when Donald Trump comes in.
How significant would the loss of the Incirlik base be to the US-led anti-ISIL coalition?
It would be a devastating loss, a real major loss. They'd be forced to fall back on British bases in Cyprus and bases further beyond that. And what is at stake here is what the Turks are saying is they've now been involved in the fighting in Syria against Daesh. They're fighting alongside what the so-called Free Syrian Army. American operations has depended on the aerial campaign and largely Kurdish ground troops who've registered significant successes against the Islamic State. But of course, Turkey sees the Kurds as much a problem as Daesh and doesn't like this American-Kurdish coalition which has emerged in Syria over the coming months. So here at the heart of the problem is the Kurdish problem once again, with the Americans warming to the Kurdish forces in Syria and the Turks seeing them as essentially the same as the PKK, the organisation which are waging a war within Turkey. So the Kurdish question is at the heart of this, really.
Well, Turkey has previously complained about a lack of support from coalition forces when it comes to the battle on the ground against ISIL. Do you think that they have good grounds to accuse the US of this?
Well, the US are very cautious about committing support for the Turkish forces precisely because if they did that, then the consequence of that would be a breakdown of the alliance with the Kurdish forces on the ground, which have produced the best, since the defeat of Daesh at Kobani, had produced the best military results of anyone in lots of ways in the fight against Daesh. So Turkey is a Johnny-come-lately to the operations against Daesh in Syria, and the Americans are treating them with some concern because they don't know what help they're going to give, whether that's going to end up being used against those Kurdish forces I mentioned. So there's a serious issue at stake here. But above all, I do think that the Erdogan government sees American foreign policy in a mess, sees that Obama is not really in control of policy in the region, sees there's going to be a big change under Donald Trump, and is trying to play that for everything they can. And meanwhile, is also forging relations with Russia and to a lesser extent with Iran, which the Americans don't like either.
Chris Bambury, political analyst, thanks for talking to us on RT International. It's been great to have your insight.